Poppy Playtime Chapter 4 is finally here, and it's crazy with insane story and new characters. So today, I'll be drawing the new toys from Chapter 4 as humans. Spoilers ahead. First up is my favorite character from the chapter, Doey. Doey the Dough-Man is a toy shown at the very start of the chapter with his own commercial and theme song. Doey is multicolored, his main body color being blue with accents of yellow, orange, and red. Looking closely, we can also see these colors on his belly form into 3 hands. A little bit into Chapter 4, we meet Doey the Dough-Man once he saves us from being eaten by the Pianosaurus after falling into a pit. He appears as a man made of Play-Doh with a very large body, as well as very long neck, and a round dough head with a blue hat. Doey comes off as a very goofy and carefree guy when we first meet him, and while he does treat the player kindly, he does show some trust issues, being cautiously optimistic around us. Just like every other toy, Doey was an experiment. However, he's very unique compared to the rest of the toys. This is because later on, we learn Doey is actually made up of 3 different children: Jack Ayers, Kevin Barnes, and Matthew Hillard. It first began with Jack, who we see in some footage right after Doey's commercial plays. Jack is gifted with a Doey toy and a trip to the Playtime factory, which he's clearly very excited about. Little did he know, this would be a huge mistake. In the footage while exploring the factory, Jack accidentally falls into one of the dough processing machines, as we can hear the panic and screams from the crowd and Jack's parents. The second one, Kevin, was deemed quote-unquote a problem child, having many behavioral issues, often lashing out and hurting other kids around him. Opposite to Kevin was Matthew, who the scientists considered a dream child, being kind and caring. These 3 children were used for the Doey project, Experiment 1322, becoming the bigger body of Doey. Later on, in a tape, it's revealed Jack's parents were actually invited back to the factory to visit Jack as the new bigger body of Doey. However, they weren't aware Doey was also made of 2 other children, Kevin and Matthew. The scientists lock the parents in the room with Doey, having no way out. Within Doey, Kevin gets very upset, believing Jack's parents are scientists who have come to hurt him, causing Doey to lose control, killing both of Jack's parents in the process. The scientists definitely let this happen on purpose. All 3 of these children's personalities shine through Doey, as he is all of them. Matthew being Doey's kindness and concern for others, acting more so as a leader for the still sane and alive toys in Safe Haven. He calls them his family and he cares for them deeply. Jack shines through as Doey's more playful and innocent side. And lastly, Kevin acts more so as Doey's anger. While Doey does switch frequently between these personalities, Matthews seems to be the most consistent, making Doey overall a very kind and considerate guy who really cares about his toy family and only wants what's best for them. We really get to see just how much Doey cares for the others when it's revealed in one of the tapes that Doey had the opportunity to escape the factory himself, but he didn't, because he didn't want to leave his friends behind. This is why Doey feels so conflicted with Poppy's idea of blowing up the factory with the other toys in it to defeat the prototype. He sees value in everyone and wants everyone to make it out alive. When the safe haven suddenly gets blown up, Doey breaks down, seeing his friends that he tried so desperately to protect now gone. This is really when Kevin takes over. In a fit of rage and sadness, Doey transforms into an unrecognizable version of himself, screaming and trying to kill the player. This part is really sad, as we literally hear Doey crying out for his mom and dad, saying he just wants to go home. I hated this part so much. When Doey is finally defeated, he apologizes to us and regrets not being able to protect everyone, finally passing away from his injuries. I was so upset when Doey died. He was honestly the best thing to happen to Chapter 4. While this chapter definitely wasn't as scary as Chapter 3, it was very story focused and emotional. And in that aspect, I think they did a great job with this chapter. Doey was clearly a character meant to be loved by everyone, and then of course the game crushed our hearts into millions of pieces when they killed him off. You'll be missed, Doey. Now for Doey the human. His hairstyle is short and blue, with some swirls to represent how flexible Play-Doh is. Of course, I didn't forget that mini top hat, and he's got a big wide smile, but definitely not as wide as the original. That'd be impossible. He's wearing a long blue shirt with some light blue swirls mixed in, paired with some multicolor overalls that have those bendy arms as the straps. I wanted all the colors to mesh together in a way that really resembles Play-Doh, and I definitely liked how it turned out. His red tie is also a swirly arm. Here is human Doey. Next on this list is Yarnaby. Yarnaby appears as a toy representing a lion, his long hair being made of rainbow yarn, along with having big shiny eyes and a very wide smile that stretches across his entire face with very sharp fangs. He walks on all 4s and has big paws with sharp claws. A split can be seen going directly down his face, and when he opens it, oh my god, what the hell is that? Alright, as long as he keeps his head closed, Yarnaby is adorable. He's described by Playtime Co. to have a very playful personality with a heart of gold, as well as having his own song, saying he protects children's dreams and is a very cuddly friend. His toy was originally made for a wildlife campaign, and Yarnaby was made by Playtime Co. to spread awareness. This toy did insanely well, and continued to be sold even after the campaign ended, making it one of Playtime Co.'s biggest successes. However, he definitely isn't as friendly in the game, being a secondary antagonist of Chapter 4. When attacking, his face splits in half, revealing a horrifying set of fangs in the front, as well as in the back of his throat. This has got to be one of the scariest designs yet. Through some digging in the game, we find that the bigger body of Yarnaby was originally an orphan named Quinn Davidson, and Playcam care, he was described as shy and often held back during testing. However, Dr. Harley Sawyer saw great potential in Quinn, convincing him to give it his all. He turned out to perform significantly better than many of the children, and so he was selected to become Experiment 1166, the bigger body of Yarnaby. Shortly after his creation, the Doctor wanted to mold Yarnaby to be exactly what he wanted, completely loyal to him, and so he did, by completely isolating Yarnaby from all contact with anyone besides himself, which was a success, as Yarnaby became extremely attached to the Doctor. However, after the Doctor's removal, Yarnaby became very depressed after losing his master, but after the Hour of Joy, they were reunited. And that brings us to Chapter 4. We first encounter Yarnaby when the Doctor releases Yarnaby from his cell to hunt down the player. Throughout the game, getting away from Yarnaby proves to be difficult, as he always manages to find where the player is. It also didn't help that in the first release of Chapter 4, Yarnaby's AI was very buggy, sometimes not even able to see the player right in front of him, and other times being able to spot the player from super far away, which was annoying. But patches came and mostly fixed the issue, I think. This chase doesn't last forever though. During the final chase sequence, Yarnaby grabs onto a chain to reach the player, but due to the extreme heat and the fact that he's literally made of yarn, he gets stuck on the chain and sets on fire, with Yarnaby eventually falling to his death while still engulfed in flames. And that was it for Yarnaby. I will admit, I think the chase scenes could have been scarier, and it would have been cool if Yarnaby had a little more screen time, but at least he got more than what Pianosaurus did. Anyways, I love Yarnaby, and I think he has such a cute design. Probably one of my favorites so far. I drew Yarnaby to look more youthful, as he's described as playful and pure, just like a cute lion cub. Yarnaby's original hair really reminded me of dreads, so I chose that for his hairstyle. As a human, I imagine Yarnaby would be very passionate about wildlife, so much to the point where he thinks of himself as a lion. That's definitely something a kid would do. He's wearing this cute pair of overalls with a fake lion tail taped on. He also made his own gloves with fake claws on them to look like real lion paws. Yarnaby is made of yarn after all, so as a human, he'd probably be a very crafty and creative little kid. Pretending to be a lion, I can totally see him playing outside and climbing trees and chasing other kids, so there's some rough spots on his clothes from playing so much, along with the band-aid on his face. I think he turned out adorable, and I especially had fun drawing the hair. Here is human Yarnaby. Now let's draw Pianosaurus, which was a tragedy. Pianosaurus appears as a green dinosaur with multicolored spikes on his head and back, his claws also being rainbow. His most prominent feature is his large keyboard mouth, which takes up most of his face, as well as piano keys stretching across his entire body. He also has very tiny eyes that stare into your soul. As the name suggests, Pianosaurus is meant to be a musical toy, as pressing the piano keys make noises, though not very good sounding ones. While he is considered a Chapter 4 character, this isn't the first time that Pianosaurus made an appearance. His first ever appearance was in Mob Entertainment's Chapter 4 Ice Pick ARG, an alternate reality game made to tease Chapter 4 of Poppy Playtime before its release. In this game, we see a photo of something very pixelated. Turns out, when decoded, it's a sneak peek of Pianosaurus, so that's pretty cool. When we find his cardboard cutout, most of his lines are him singing very cheerfully, before playing a very distorted version of his theme song, and ending by glitching out. In the chapters, Pianosaurus is an antagonist, but a very minor one. The player first encounters him after slipping off a steep edge and landing into his habitat, where Pianosaurus seems to be feasting on something. I have no idea what he's eating, but it's safe to assume he's committed cannibalism, unless he somehow walked down to the nearest Taco Bell. He suddenly rushes towards the player, but is then grabbed by Doey, who drags him away and repeatedly smashes him against the walls, then finally eats him alive, only leaving a couple small pieces and his head. Yep, that's it. Pianosaurus literally gets 8 seconds of screen time. His song is longer than that. Needless to say, myself and others were very upset at his lack of screen time, even leading to the hashtag Justice for Pianosaurus. Bro did not deserve this. The backstory of this guy is a little complicated though, as apparently according to Dr. Harley Sawyer, Pianosaurus had a bigger body experiment which went incredibly wrong, describing him as a mindless failed experiment. Not even his piano keys played properly and were completely out of tune. We hear this when we first encounter him, and it's clear his notes are very off, so he was sent back for testing and not really used for anything. Despite this absolute tragedy, many fans are theorizing that what we saw was simply a smaller toy version of Pianosaurus and not actually the bigger bodied version, and there's a reason for this. Up close to the player, he actually isn't very big at all. In fact, close up, he looks like he may even be smaller than the player. So I'm hoping this is true, because it would be awesome to get to see him again in Chapter 5, so let's just hope that happens. Unfortunately, we don't get much info at all about his past human form or his original name, but judging from his cardboard cutout, it's safe to say Pianosaurus is a very happy guy who loves music. I drew him with a cute hat that includes those colorful spikes, as well as short fluffy green hair. Since he loves making music, he has one of those portable piano boards. I imagine as a human, Pianosaurus does shows to play music for kids as a children's musician. He's wearing a green vest with a piano-themed tie, and wearing cosplay of Pianosaurus' original tail. Here is human Pianosaurus. Last but not least on this list is Dr. Harley Sawyer, also known as the Doctor, one of the main antagonists of Chapter 4. While he merely appears as an eye on a screen, he poses as a huge threat to the player throughout the chapter, with his hidden tricks and feisty minions. And while he isn't a toy, he's still an experiment. But who was he before this? We've learned about the Doctor in previous chapters through VHS tapes and transcripts. In his past life, he was originally hired by Leif Pierre as a neurosurgeon, then promoted to head of special projects. Discovering the company would soon go bankrupt, the Doctor came up with a solution to their problems, the Bigger Bodies Initiative, which resulted in thousands of orphans and low-level employees being used as experiments to be turned into toys, with many of those experiments failing and wasting so many lives. But none of that mattered to Harley Sawyer. He was a complete sociopath, with narcissistic and cruel tendencies. This cruel behavior even concerned other employees. He was a genius that cared only about his goals, and it didn't matter to him what he needed to do to achieve them. Later in his career, there was something called the theater incident. We don't really get much detail on what this was, but in this incident, 66 visitors in the factory and a dozen specialists died. It was later confirmed the Doctor was responsible for these deaths. This led to Leif Pierre turning Harley Sawyer into Experiment 1354, transferring his brains and organs into vital systems around the factory so he could still function, but within a machine. This way, the company could still take advantage of the Doctor's knowledge, and he was unable to leave. He was forced to provide them with answers to any experimental problems they wanted, or else they'd pull his life support plug. Man, that's rough. Anyways, after surviving the Hour of Joy, despite him formerly working with Playtime Co., the prototype does spare the Doctor. Fast forward to Chapter 4, upon entering the prison, the player meets the Doctor, who appears as an eye on the screen. The Doctor calls the player a little germ, saying he wants to make a game of them, and that they cannot hide as he sees everything. Throughout the chapter, he sends toys to attack the player for his own amusement, including his loyal pet, Yarnaby. After Yarnaby dies, he sends Baba Chops to attack the player, but they eventually manage to escape. Eventually, we discover the Doctor's brain and organs inside a vital system, but suddenly, the Doctor takes control of one of his minion bodies and throws the player inside a trapdoor, which leads to a room where all of his reserved bodies are kept. These minions chase after the player until they eventually manage to power on the terminals and ultimately overload the Doctor's system, destroying what remains of him. As the Doctor dies, he tells the player that he has saved no one. And that was it for Dr. Harley Sawyer. Some theorize he isn't actually dead and may return in the future, but who knows? Bro's brain literally exploded. There was a lot of controversy about how his boss battle was too easy and his death was underwhelming, but let me know your thoughts in the comments. I really liked the Doctor and I thought he was a really cool character in this chapter. I was a bit stumped on how to turn him human, since he's just a brain and also a TV and an eyeball. We also have zero clue what he looked like back then when he was a human. So for this one, I really went with what I thought he would look like and stuck with those same grim and gloomy colors. I think he turned out very cool. Here is Dr. Harley Sawyer. Hey broskies, what did you think of Chapter 4? Personally, I loved it. And comment below your favorite drawing in the video. You guys know I love reading your comments. Okay, bye!